The greatest source of human suffering is not misfortune itself, but the stubbornness with which we cling to what we cannot change. Since time immemorial, men have wasted their days cursing the storm, lamenting fate, tormenting themselves over events beyond their command. Yet wisdom teaches us that there are only two domains in life: what is within our power and what is not. To confuse them is to invite frustration, to understand them is to find peace. Consider the man who stakes his happiness on the approval of others. He toils, bends his will, crafts his words to please, yet still he is met with rejection. The foolish man, wounded by this, rages against the world. He blames others, curses fate, and wastes his breath demanding fairness where none was promised. But the wise man sees clearly: others' thoughts, judgments, and whims are not his to command. Only his own mind, his own actions, and his own integrity are within his grasp. Why then should he allow his peace to be ruled by forces he cannot control? Epictetus, a slave in body but free in spirit, spoke these words: "Some things are up to us, and some things are not." A truth so simple, yet so often ignored. The weather, the turning of the stars, the opinions of others, these are the domain of fortune, not of will. To fight them is folly. To accept them is wisdom. Instead of lamenting the waves, learn to sail. Instead of cursing the wind, adjust your course. He who masters himself, who governs his own thoughts and deeds, is never truly at the mercy of fate. Thus, the path is clear. Cease your struggle against that which lies beyond your hands. Direct your energy only to what is yours to shape: your choices, your discipline, your response to the world. In doing so, you shall discover a freedom no chains can bind, and a peace no storm can shatter. There are those who move through life resisting every hardship, cursing every misstep, and mourning what could have been. They see misfortune as an insult, pain as an injustice, and struggle as a sign that the world has turned against them. They fail to see the deeper truth: fate is neither cruel nor kind, it simply is. The wise man does not merely accept his fate. He embraces it. He does not recoil at hardship, nor does he waste time wishing for a different past. He loves all that happens, for he knows it is his to endure, to learn from, and to be shaped by. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, knew suffering well. He faced war, plague, betrayal, yet he wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." This is the essence of Amor Fati: to burn brightly, no matter what fuel the gods throw upon your fire. Imagine a man who loses his wealth overnight. The fool despairs, believing himself ruined. But the wise man sees beyond his loss. He says, "Very well, fortune has taken this from me, what shall I do now?" He rebuilds, adapts, and discovers that true wealth was never in coins, but in his own hands, his own mind, and his own will. The same is true for the body. Age withers us, injury weakens us, and no man can escape death. But why should we rage against this? Would we curse the sun for setting or the tide for shifting? No, the wise man walks alongside time, not against it. Thus, you must ask yourself, when hardship comes, will you meet it with resentment, or will you meet it with open arms? Will you curse the storm, or will you become the sailor who learns to master the waves? To love fate is to love life itself, not only in its joys, but in its trials. Not only in its gifts, but in its losses. To reject nothing, to resist nothing, but to take all as it comes and forge something greater from it. This is the path to true strength, and to a peace that no misfortune can steal. Whatever happens, let it come. Let it shape you, and let it make you greater. Men live as if they were eternal. They waste their hours in idleness, their days in worry, their years in pursuits that bring them no real joy. They make plans for a future they may never see, postponing wisdom, love, and virtue as if tomorrow were promised to them. But the truth stands, unshaken and unmoved: death comes for all, and none know the hour. To ignore this is folly. To remember it is power. The great emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." He understood that awareness of death is not meant to bring fear, but urgency. It is a call to live, to strip away the trivial, and to embrace what matters. Imagine a man who learns that he has but 1 year left to live. See how quickly his priorities shift. The quarrels he once clung to seem foolish now. The riches he once pursued no longer hold meaning. He turns instead to what was always precious: time with loved ones, moments of quiet reflection, the pursuit of wisdom. Yet the wise man does not wait for such a revelation. He remembers, daily, that he is mortal. He does not push his life into some distant future, but lives with intention now. He does not delay kindness, nor does he hold back from speaking truth, for he knows he may never have another chance. Memento Mori is not a morbid thought, it is a liberating one. It frees you from the illusion that you have time to waste. It teaches you that each moment is a gift, each day a canvas upon which you must paint with care. So ask yourself, if this were your final day, how would you live it? If these were your last words, would they be worthy of remembrance? Live with the certainty that death walks beside you, not as an enemy, but as a reminder to live fully, boldly, and without regret. For when the hour finally comes, the man who has truly lived will not meet death with fear, but with a steady gaze and a quiet smile. The world is in constant turmoil, men rise and fall, fortunes are gained and lost, tempers flare, and passions consume. The weak are tossed like leaves in a storm, swayed by every insult, every disappointment, every shift in fortune. They are slaves not to men, but to their own emotions. But the wise man is unshaken. He is not indifferent, nor is he cold. He simply does not let external events rule his soul. He understands that true strength is not found in conquest, but in mastery of oneself. A man insults you. Another takes what is yours. The winds of fate turn against you. What will you do? Will you rage, weep, despair? No, you will remain as steady as a mountain. The storm may howl, but it cannot move the earth beneath it. Seneca wrote, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." And yet, how many men torment themselves with fears of things that may never come to pass? How many let their peace be stolen by events that are already beyond their reach? The one who seeks apatheia, tranquility of mind, understands this truth: emotions are not chains, but reins. They must be held firmly, directed with wisdom, and never allowed to take control. This does not mean one should feel nothing. It means one should feel rightly. Grief should not consume, nor should anger dictate action. The wise man acknowledges his emotions but refuses to be ruled by them. He sees them as passing waves, real, but not permanent. Ask yourself, when you are slighted, do you strike back in anger, or do you rise above it? When misfortune befalls you, do you collapse in sorrow, or do you stand firm, knowing that nothing can truly harm your character? If you would be free, if you would be truly powerful, then learn to govern yourself. Let others be prisoners of their rage, their envy, their despair. But you, be as the calm sea beneath the storm, untouchable, unmoved, and at peace. Men chase after wealth, power, and pleasure as if these were the highest goods, as if their happiness depended upon them. They toil, they scheme, they grasp at fleeting comforts, only to find that these things slip through their fingers like sand. What is truly good cannot be taken away by fortune, nor lost to the whims of time. The Stoics understood this well. Virtue alone is the highest good, for it is the only thing entirely within our control. Riches may vanish, health may fail, loved ones may depart, but no force in the universe can strip a man of his character, except himself. Consider the tyrant, draped in gold, seated on a throne. He commands armies, he dictates the fate of nations. And yet, if he is corrupt, deceitful, or cruel, what is he truly? A slave to his own vices. A man of low worth, despite his power. Now, consider the beggar in the street, who carries himself with dignity, who is honest, who harms no one and does what is right. Is he not richer than the tyrant? For what is wealth if it breeds greed? What is power if it corrupts the soul? What is pleasure if it makes a man weak? None of these are good in themselves. They are tools, indifferent in nature, useful only if guided by virtue. Virtue consists of 4 pillars. Wisdom, seeing the world clearly, making sound judgments. Courage, facing adversity without fear, standing firm in principle. Justice, doing what is right, even when no one is watching. Temperance, controlling desires, taking only what is needed. These are the true measures of a man. Without them, all else is meaningless. Ask yourself, if all were taken from you, your wealth, your home, your status, what would remain? Would you still be good? Would you still be whole? If your happiness depends on fortune, it is fragile. But if your joy is rooted in virtue, nothing can touch it. Seek not to possess more, but to be more. For in the end, only one thing matters: the kind of person you have chosen to become. The greatest battle a man will ever fight is not against another, but against himself. The undisciplined man is a slave to his appetites, his impulses, his fears. He knows what he ought to do, yet he delays. He desires strength, yet he indulges in weakness. He speaks of wisdom, yet he follows foolish desires. But the disciplined man, he is free. He governs himself, his thoughts, his actions. He does not surrender to fleeting pleasures, nor is he swayed by momentary discomfort. He commands his own mind, and thus he commands his fate. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Reflect upon this. If you cannot resist temptation, are you truly in control? If you cannot rise early when duty calls, if you cannot restrain your tongue when anger flares, if you cannot deny yourself excess, then you are not the master, but the servant. Self-discipline is the foundation upon which all virtue rests. Without it, wisdom is empty, for the mind is too weak to follow its own advice. Without it, courage is impossible, for fear will rule over action. Without it, justice falters, for a man who cannot restrain his desires will always serve himself first. The path of discipline is not easy. It requires that you deny yourself comfort, that you train the body and the mind to endure hardship. It requires that you act not according to feeling, but according to reason. But what is the alternative? A life dictated by whim? A life spent chasing indulgence, only to find yourself empty? He who would be strong must first master himself. He must rise when others sleep, he must act when others hesitate, he must endure when others falter. Not because it is easy, but because it is right. So ask yourself, do you own your desires, or do they own you? Do you command your body, or does it command you? The choice is yours. Either you will master yourself, or you will be mastered by another. Choose wisely. A man stumbles in the street. One laughs, another rushes to help, a third looks away in indifference. The same event, yet three different reactions. Why? Because it is not events that disturb us, but our judgments of them. This is the essence of perception. Nothing is good or bad in itself, only our minds make it so. Two men may face the same hardship. One will see it as a curse, the other as an opportunity to grow. Which of them is right? The one who chooses to see clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, it is not the thing itself that troubles you, but your judgment of it, and this you have the power to change." Reflect on this. You are insulted. Do you take offense, or do you dismiss the words as meaningless? You lose something valuable. Do you despair, or do you remind yourself that possessions are fleeting? You face hardship. Do you crumble, or do you see it as a test of your strength? Most men do not see the world as it is. They see it as their fears, desires, and biases color it. They mistake opinion for truth, assumption for reality. But the wise man questions his first reaction. He pauses. He asks, what is this, really? What am I adding to it? Imagine a storm at sea. The foolish sailor curses the wind, prays for it to change. The wise sailor does not waste breath on such things. He adjusts his sails. So too must you. Do not wish for the world to bend to your desires. Instead, bend your mind to see it rightly. Next time you feel anger, despair, frustration, pause. Ask yourself, is this truly bad, or am I making it so? Adjust your perception, and you will adjust your life. Men fight against the natural order, demanding that the world bend to their desires. They curse the rain for falling, the winter for being cold, time for moving forward. They struggle against what simply is, as if their protests could halt the turning of the heavens. But the wise man does not resist nature, he moves with it. He understands that he is but a small part of something vast, that he belongs to a greater whole. He does not seek to escape his nature, but to fulfill it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What is in accord with you, O universe, is in accord with me." This is the essence of living according to nature, not in the sense of returning to the wilderness, but in understanding one's place in the grand order of things. A tree does not resist the seasons. It does not lament the shedding of its leaves, nor does it wish to bear fruit out of season. It simply follows its purpose. And yet, how many men waste their lives wishing to be something other than what they are? The young long to be older, the old long to be young again. The weak envy the strong, the rich fear becoming poor, and the poor wish to be rich. But what if, instead of resisting, you embraced what you were meant to be? What if you asked, "What is my nature? What is my purpose?" The Stoics believed that man's highest nature was to live with reason, virtue, and duty to others. To act with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, not because it is easy, but because it is right. Look at the world around you. See how all things move in their course. The river flows, the stars revolve, the earth turns. Nothing is stagnant, and nothing is truly lost. Why, then, should you fear change? Why should you resist what must be? Do not wish for the universe to serve you. Instead, learn to serve the universe. Align yourself with its rhythm, fulfill your role, and you will find peace. For the man who lives in harmony with nature is never at odds with the world. He is at peace with it. Many men live in comfort, assuming that fortune will always favor them. They believe tomorrow will be as today, that their health will endure, that their wealth will remain, that those they love will always be near. But life is not so kind. Sickness comes. Loss arrives. Fortune turns, and those who are unprepared are broken beneath its weight. The wise man, however, does not wait for hardship to strike before preparing himself. He meets adversity first in his mind, so that when it arrives in the world, he is already familiar with it. Seneca wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has seen their coming beforehand." The man who considers misfortune before it arrives does not fear it when it does. He has rehearsed it in his mind, he has steeled his heart, and he knows he will endure. Imagine two men facing the same tragedy, the loss of a home, the ruin of fortune, the betrayal of a friend. One is crushed by despair, caught unprepared, unable to cope with the weight of reality. The other, having already contemplated such a day, remains standing. He mourns, perhaps, but he does not break. He has already lived this moment in his mind. He has already decided who he will be when it comes. This is not to say one should dwell in fear or darken the present with the shadow of possible misfortunes. No, it is to train the mind as a soldier trains for battle. The warrior does not hope for peace and neglect his sword. He sharpens it, even in quiet times. So too must you prepare your mind, strengthening it against whatever storm may come. How does one do this? By imagining loss before it happens. By reminding oneself that riches, health, and even life itself are temporary. By asking, "What would I do if all I had was taken from me? Who would I be without comfort? Would I still be strong? Would I still be good?" To fear misfortune is to be its slave before it even arrives. But to prepare for it is to be its master. Train yourself now, while the seas are calm, so that when the storm comes, you will not sink, you will sail through it. Men believe that happiness is found in abundance. They chase wealth, possessions, luxury, always hungry for more, never satisfied. They pile their homes with goods, their bodies with indulgence, and their minds with endless desires. Yet, the more they acquire, the more restless they become. The weight of their own excess crushes them. The wise man knows better. He does not seek to own more, but to need less. He does not measure his life by what he possesses, but by what he can live without. For true freedom is not found in riches, but in self-sufficiency. Epictetus, who was once a slave, understood this well. He had nothing, yet he was free. He taught, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." A man who is satisfied with little can never be impoverished, for he already possesses all he needs. Look at those who are ruled by their desires. They are never at peace, for their minds are always reaching, always lacking. They toil endlessly for luxuries, yet fear losing them the moment they are gained. Their riches own them more than they own their riches. Now look at the man who embraces simplicity. He walks lightly through life, unburdened. He does not waste his days maintaining excess, nor does he suffer the anxiety of losing it. He is content with what is necessary: food, shelter, purpose, wisdom. And because of this, he is richer than kings. This does not mean one must live in rags, nor reject all comfort. Rather, it means knowing what is truly essential and refusing to be enslaved by the rest. It means understanding that no object, no possession, no indulgence can bring the peace that self-discipline and contentment provide. Ask yourself, if all were taken from you tomorrow, would you still stand unshaken? Or have you chained yourself to things that, in the end, were never truly yours? Live simply. Desire little. Own only what serves you, and never become a servant to what you own. In this, you will find a freedom no wealth can buy, and a peace no fortune can disturb.